welcome back again. You're still watching us here on The Breakfast Show. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about energy and the energy crisis that Egypt is facing, whether it is in the shortages of electricity, switching to other means of energy, encouraging young researchers to make more researches regarding this sector in Egypt, and possibly looking for people to finance these researchers, turn them into projects that would benefit the country as a whole, and at the end, of course, how will this add to the economy of this country? We're very much delighted to have joining us here in the studio this morning Dr. Amr Mohsen, an energy expert. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Doctor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Amr. Dr. Amr, as you know, of course, that Egypt is facing an energy crisis in spite of the fact that we are in the winter. Because of the very cold temperature, we have witnessed many people using heaters, air conditioning. So we witnessed again electricity cuts. So from your point of view, what could be the way out of this energy crisis in the short term, ahead, of course, of the summer season?
Okay. Of course, this is a subject that is much alive in everybody's
Indeed.
mind, because it touches all of us in our daily life. And simply put, it's just a mismatch between supply and demand. Like you just mentioned, there is a certain demand for energy in general, be it electricity or be it fuel for the cars and transportation. So we have a problem that we are facing on both fronts, electricity and fuel for transportation, that is more or less the same problem, which is a shortage between supply and demand. So this results, of course, in the brownouts, and it results in problems with, we see with LPG bottles for cooking, with petrol for cars, diesel for heavier transportation, and so on. So unless we solve that, unless we bridge the gap between supply and demand that is currently existing, we will continue to have brownouts in electricity, which is the electricity shortage, and cutouts and so on. And we will face still problems in LPG bottles and in fuel for transportation. So it's one and the same problem, which is how to bridge the gap that exists now between supply and demand.
Indeed.
Yes.
And it's the solution is really not so difficult, fortunately. And
Not so difficult.
it's not so difficult.
So why we do not find the solution which is not so difficult, if it's easy?
Let's say because we have been expecting this shortage to happen since at least a decade, but the reaction has been too slow.
Too slow, actually.
Yes.
Too slow. Speaking of solutions, I'm sorry to interrupt here, Dr. Amr. The fact that here in Egypt, as you said, the reactions are so slow. Not only is the reactions being very slow, but we don't have this ideology here in Egypt of renovation, regular fixing or maintenance, if I may say, to anything to do in our lives, whether it's our homes, our cars, electricity, energy. These stations, they needed renovation, they needed maintenance on very long period of years. New techniques, I don't know what it looks like in there, but definitely there's something wrong that caused all the shortages. And now don't you see that the more time you waste, the difficult it becomes to solve the solution, the more cost it will also be to resolve the solution. And how can we today change that ideology? See, we're into the new Egypt, new government, expecting a parliament. Younger generations are going to be into the picture to be able to give their ideas. How do you see this whole picture?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I agree with you that our society has a culture that we can say resists change. So I agree with you on that point. But the time has come when we really have to adapt, and we really have to tackle the problems and accept that the solutions mean change. Because like I was saying, the problem really on both fronts, be it electricity or fuel, is the gap between supply and demand. So we have to bridge that gap. And the earlier we do it, the easier it's going to be for everybody. And when we look at the situation right now, let's say for electricity, for example, we have a certain infrastructure that consists of a number of electricity generation power plants that feed on natural gas mainly, but also that feed on liquid fuel. And now the government has decided to go for very polluting fuels like coal, which is not quite the right solution since we have
Alternatives.
Nobody uses coal
potential.
fuels anymore. You know, it's very old.
The coal?
Yeah, well,
The coal, yes, nobody uses it, and
yeah,
people
but
are switching
the
to solar
decision
energy
has
now.
Decision has been taken, unfortunately, and I think they are pressing ahead to burn coal, which of course doesn't make a lot of people happy. Quite
More pollution.
and
That's
I'm
exactly
one
what
of
we need
them
at this
because,
stage.
yeah, of course, we don't really need more pollution. We can do without, especially that we have clean solutions. And
Why,
Egypt
Dr.
has-
Amr, we do not resort to the clean solution, the renewable sources of energy, the usage of solar energy, windfalls, windmills,
Especially
for
as
example.
all the natural elements are already
methods.
present.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let me give you a few figures so that the picture can get clearer for everybody. The resources that Egypt has in terms of solar energy, for example, numerous studies have been conducted on the Egyptian solar resources, and most of these studies have been done by European institutions. Yeah. And they have evaluated based on actual measurements, be it from satellite, calibrated by ground measurements. So it's really something very, very simple. They've concluded that Egypt can generate electricity from the sun of Egypt that is equivalent to the demand of the entire humanity, all 7.5 billion people who live on this planet, 6 times over. 6 times over. So we have a humongous potential to produce clean electricity just from our solar resources. Add to that our wind resources. For example, if you look at the western coast of the Gulf of Suez, we have there a potential, again, based on studies, on measurements that have started since the 1980s. So these are scientific figures. They're not just, estimates. We have a potential on the Gulf of Suez to produce 20,000 megawatts of electricity just from wind, just from that location. And if you look at the entire demand for electricity in Egypt today, maximum is 28,000 megawatts. So 20,000 can come from the wind. So, of course, when you have such rich resources that are clean and you resort to coal and so on, then you start to ask yourself the question, which is quite legitimate, are we going the right direction?
Actually, right now what you said really upset me and switched my mood to depressed. And I just don't understand, with all these estimates and researchers and experts like yourself who present to the government and to those who are in charge of the decision makers in the country. To charcoal again, remind me?
That's not a question for me to answer.
On air.
Yeah. But I would say, let's look at the thing from a positive angle.
What's
if I
positive
may.
about using charcoal?
No, I'm not talking about
using charcoal.
There's nothing
This
positive about
issue is
using
really,
coal.
yeah.
Burning coal is really
Generally speaking,
unjustifiable.
why aren't we moving towards where the direction of the rest of the world? I know that solar energy is costly, even for individuals, but on the long run, it is efficient. This is the problem. We don't have a long run vision. We only want, instant, problems. The summer is coming a couple of months. There'll be a lot of...
I didn't, okay?
Yeah, I said that. Well, because that's
No,
true fact.
let me try and give something a bit positive here, that the government has also moved in the direction of clean energy. Back in September 2014, so only a few months ago, the Egyptian government has announced a so-called feed-in tariff. And what this feed-in tariff means is that the government is saying to the private sector, look, investors, if you are willing to come and build plants that generate electricity using our solar resources, then we, the government, are ready to buy that electricity from you, and we are ready to sign a PPA. PPA is a power purchase agreement, which makes the whole thing bankable, which makes the investor quite relaxed in investing the money because he is quite sure that the government has signed for buying the product of the plant, which is the electricity. And not only the government is committing itself to buying in under that power purchase agreement for 20 years to come, so it makes the investor really quite confident and quite relaxed, but they also, the government also commits to buying that clean electricity at a preferential price, which they have set in the feed-in tariff announcement. And based on that, there was a big rush of a lot of investors, be it Egyptian or foreign or Arab, and they rushed to the Ministry of Electricity applying for building plants which have a total power generation capacity of 14,000 megawatts. If you think of the entire demand of Egypt is let's say 28,000 megawatts, in just a few months there were